Here's chapter 3 of Spirit School, entitled Scare. It had been a bit of a nightmare, but they had gotten away with it, and they slept soundly that night. The next day they had a sports lesson, baseball. Everyone crowded around as the teams were picked. It was a lovely day and the sun was shining beautifully across the fields. James bounded onto the field in his tight white shorts and polo shirt. The girls tried not to notice his muscled thighs and the way his shirt clung to his chiseled chest. He swung his bat and sent the ball flying into the air. Jane and Lucy ran together and almost clashed as the ball sailed over their heads. Gosh, he's strong, Lucy thought. All afternoon he hit the ball left, right, and center. By the end of the first break, they were panting like dogs. When they sat on the grass and drank lemonade, sweat was dripping off them in torrents, but it was fun. Anna watched the sweat run down James' thigh. Things were definitely hotting up, she thought. Then it was Lucy's turn, and she swung the bat and the ball went through it. Time and again, at last she connected, and the ball flew into the crimson sky. She ran exhilarated halfway around, and she realized she was out. James was standing there with a dumb smile on his face, with the ball in his hand. She dropped the bat, feeling annoyed, and let Anna take her turn. Lucy could sense a little competition in Anna's smile. She also noticed James paying her a lot of attention. Anna swung the bat and hit the ball dead center. James fumbled a catch, and she ran a home run with her skirt swishing in the breeze. Lucy half believed he had missed the ball on purpose. She felt herself blushing as Anna racked up a good score. Finally, it was over, and they left the field arm in arm, still friends but tired. The next morning, they had a music lesson, and they sang all sorts of songs. The teacher was a pretty woman with long black hair and a witchy nose. She handed them out an instrument each. James grabbed the guitar and immediately began banging out chords. He was a jack of all trades and could turn his hand at most things. He was the kind of guy who the boys were jealous of. Lucy and Anna picked a flute each, and immediately they started trilling out of tune and out of breath. The teacher, Miss Melody Brown, guided them through the chords and the scales, and it was all great fun. James looked like a young Bon Jovi with his guitar in hand. He was in his element. They all chatted during break time. I don't know you could play the guitar, Anna said, wide-eyed. Oh, it's nothing, said James with a cheesy grin on his face. I'd love you to write me a song, said Lucy. Well, I'd love to, said James, but I only know a few chords. Lucy smiled dreamily, and they finished their coffee and went back to the lesson. That night, James practiced the chords in his bedroom. He tried his best to string a song together, but it was very difficult. Lucy and Anna practiced their flutes, trilling into the night and occasionally stopping to chat about boys. James sat in his room brooding on his songwriting skills. He thought both of the girls were pretty. It was difficult to know which one he preferred. He liked Lucy's long blonde hair, but he was also fond of Anna's full lips and button nose. He didn't want the girls to fall out over him. He secretly knew they fancied him and vice versa. The next day he woke up feeling refreshed, and he met the girls for coffee. He had to admit that he hadn't written a song yet, but he had learnt a few more chords. They both laughed and admitted they had found it hard practicing too. Lucy played with her hair and Anna licked her lips in a sultry way. James flushed a little and changed the subject. James had a lot of reading to catch up with and had decided to spend the day in the library. They said their goodbyes and he trotted off. The library was massive, with high bookshelves bursting with books under every subject: history, geography, music, politics, art, and literature, the paranormal, and dreaded maths. It was strange to know that there were books on the paranormal, James thought as he flicked through. There were photos of ghostly figures and orbs in ghost photography. On Earth, he had always been skeptical, but now he was living proof there was something to it. He didn't think of himself as dead or a ghost, more as someone who had gone to another dimension. There were many questions still to be answered, but no one was telling, so he decided to read on. As he neared the end of one long shelf, he noticed an old librarian sitting at her desk. She looked up to him and smiled and then put a craggy finger to her lips. She looked about 80, he thought. She was wearing a grey cardigan and she had grey eyes to match. James walked towards her, and as he did so, she became translucent, and then she faded before his eyes like fog into nothingness. James was shocked and stood there for a moment, half expecting her to come back. He was very scared of ghosts, but intrigued by them as well. He ran off to tell the girls, and they were amazed, and ran to the library, but it was too late and there was nothing for them to see. James explained the apparition he had seen. Maybe she used to work here, they said in unison. Of course, James said, she looked like a librarian. They decided to look through the staff records, and then they went back 20 years, and there she was. Mrs. Tucker, chief librarian, looked out at him in a photograph with the same grey hair, grey cardigan, and a thin smile. She looked just like a caricature of a dull, boring librarian. They were amazed to see her. It doesn't say how she died, but she definitely did, Lucy thought. I'd love to see her. Anna said excitedly, I wonder why we don't look like ghosts. No one could answer, but they were glad that they didn't. It felt nice to be flesh and bone. Maybe she's a spirit who's lost her way, Anna reasoned, or maybe she doesn't want to go anywhere and she prefers to glide around, scaring people, interjected Lucy. They laughed nervously. There were things they didn't understand and things they hadn't been told. It was time to ask the headmaster. He sat behind his large oak desk, listening intently with a serious look on his face, and then he spoke. So you've seen her, he said gravely. It's long been a rumour around here, he said, peering down his long nose at the girls. Many people thought it was just the pupil's imagination, but I knew it was true, he added mysteriously. What does she do? Lucy said. She wants to live, said the head. You see, he said, not everyone is happy to be in the spirit world, and others, especially the unhappy ones, want to drag you down into the darkness. A world only seen in glimpses with no light, no love, and no hope. Do you mean like hell? Anna said nervously. Yes, Mr. Graves replied, but worse, far worse. Whatever you do, don't speak to her. Run when she appears. What can she do? Said James. People have been known to go mad and lose their minds after she whispers into their ear, he said shockingly. What she says no one knows. They are usually too far gone to tell anyone. 20 years ago, she was a brilliant librarian, but she fell in love with a man who would not return her affections. He explained with a hint of sadness in his voice. Who was it? They said in unison. It was me, Mr. Graves replied. Why not? Said the girls. Oh, she was too clingy and strange, he replied heartlessly. I think that she had been treated badly in her previous life, and I was the last straw. She became a nuisance, following me around and even coming into my office with any excuse. I had a word with her and she took it quite badly. She was like a stalker, he said, banging the desk hard with his fist. From then on, she changed and became angry and withdrawn with a terrible look on her face. She was often seen wandering the school grounds, talking to herself or to someone unseen. It was then that I felt that she had lost her soul and that she had died, only to appear as a spirit. How can we die if we're already dead? They said, puzzled. Well, Mr. Graves said, we don't know, but we believe that when someone becomes full of hatred, then they lose themselves and they die, only to return as lost spirits, hoping to drag others down with them. Whatever she whispers certainly does the trick, he said. Once, he cautioned, there was a young man studying in the library. I forgot his name, and she appeared behind him like a puff of evil smoke. At first, he didn't realize she was a ghost. She crept up behind him and whispered long into his ear, and he was never the same again. He was often heard crying in the night or muttering to some unknown figure. I don't know if you believe in heaven, in hell, or the devil, but she definitely conjures up something evil, he said with a malicious grin. All we know is there is a good side and an evil side, and it's obvious which side she has gone to, he said. They all listened in awe, and later that evening, they went back to their rooms to relax. James was sitting on his bunk reading a magazine on cars. It had been a stressful day, and he just wanted to relax when there was a knock on the door. When he opened it, he was surprised to see Lucy standing there looking a little coy. "Hi," he said. "Come in," she smiled, and sat on the edge of the bed. She said how much the ghost stories had freaked her out. Although a little interested in the paranormal, she certainly didn't want to experience it close to home. She was looking sad and sullen. James put his arm around her protectively, and she smiled at him and moved closer.